Hate to say it, and while there's a ton of jobs you can do on your own car to save money at the shop, there are some you just shouldn't take on. Jobs that are really difficult, costly if you make a mistake, or downright dangerous if you get them wrong. What's the point of saving a few $100 doing a job yourself, but when it goes wrong, costs you thousands for them to undo your mistake? So we're gonna cover 10 jobs that you should definitely avoid. But for every one, I'm gonna give you a beginner-friendly job that you can do yourself to save money. Job number one has to do with your brakes. As you can imagine, brakes are a massive safety issue, so not all jobs in the brake system are gonna be good for beginners. But one really common job that I see a lot of beginners get into trouble with is replacing this master cylinder and the brake booster behind it. Anytime that you replace a master cylinder, you're gonna get air in all your brake lines and probably your ABS module. So those lines and the new master cylinder have to be properly bled. And if you don't, as you can imagine, you get squishy brakes or no brakes, and that's a massive safety concern. So you don't wanna be messing around with that stuff as a new DIYer. Now, here's a job you can do yourself. Let's get into it. And that job is replacing your own brake pads and rotors. If you go to a shop, they're probably gonna charge you $500, maybe $400 or $500 to do a set of front brake pads, which you can do yourself for $150 worth of supplies. I think doing your own brakes is one of the best ways to save money in car repair. Now, the great thing is you don't really need any specialty tools. Pretty simple to do. You're just flipping off that caliper, removing the brake pads, unbolting the old rotor, getting that out of there, and then putting everything back together with the appropriate lubricants. While it's pretty simple, it is still part of your brake system, and obviously you could have a disaster if you do it wrong. I'll throw up a link to a video that we made on how to do your brakes the right way if you're unsure about how to do your own brakes or you want some tips and tricks on how to do it better and faster. Now the next job has to do with your struts. Now the reason people do this is because they can save $100, $150 per corner by reusing the spring and taking it apart, putting it onto a new strut. I've done it plenty. I mean, we have videos of me a million years ago doing this exact job, but it requires some specialty tools and also some know-how because you can actually get seriously injured. These springs are under a ton of pressure, and if they're released improperly, they can blow up in your face and you can get seriously injured. So if you're a DIYer, what you wanna do is get the strut assembly. So it's prepackaged, it's all buttoned up with a new spring. So even though the part is a little bit more expensive, you're still saving money by doing the job yourself rather than taking it to a shop. And it's actually gonna be a lot easier and faster to do it with pre-assembled strut. Now this job is obviously dangerous if you mess it up, but there's a few jobs coming up that don't look dangerous, but one mistake could cause serious injury or major engine damage. Now this next job has to do with your steering. A really common thing to go bad in a car is the wheel bearing. It makes a loud rumbling sound. A wheel bearing is not something that a beginner DIY can handle because it takes a ton of specialty tools, specifically to press out the wheel bearing. Yeah. A lot of these wheel bearings are pressed in with heavy machinery, and so you can get all the elements apart, but actually splitting that bearing apart and putting a new one in requires a big old shop press. Now there are some exceptions where you get bolt-on wheel bearings, often they're in the rear. Those you can do yourself if you do them carefully, but a press-in wheel bearing is not something you want to tackle for that reason. But also, if you were to try to hack job a wheel bearing in using your grandpa's bottle jack or something, if you do it improperly, a failed wheel bearing can actually in some vehicles cause the wheel to fly off once it gets hot enough. So you can be going down the highway high speeds and a wheel can pop off from a bad wheel bearing. So that is not something you want to mess around with unless you know what you're doing and have the tools for it. Now when it comes to the steering system, there is a job that you can do yourself and save a ton of money. And that is a bad power steering pump that needs to be replaced. Now, this car doesn't actually have a hydraulic power steering pump, which is the kind you can do yourself. It has an electric assist box on the rack and pinion, but those go bad a whole lot less often. But a normal hydraulic power steering pump is something that you can absolutely do yourself with basic tools. The process is pretty simple. You just get the old fluid out, take the serpentine belt off, and replace the pump. You don't even need to bleed the system after you refill it. All right, the next job we're talking about has to do with belts. Now, you probably have heard of changing your timing belts. Here's why you don't want to do a timing belt as a beginning DIYer. Essentially, a timing belt or a timing chain connects the top half and lower half of your engine together and makes them all work in unison, all the moving parts. So in order to get to that thing and change it, you have to take off a lot of the engine. Oftentimes, you have to remove all the accessories, all the motors on the side. You have to take the top of the engine off, the covers. It's just a lot of parts. It's a very difficult job, just in terms of time and volume of parts you need to remove. On top of that, a timing belt, it keeps the engine timed correctly. So when you pull that off and put the new one on, it has to be exactly right, or the top half of the engine and all the valves are going to be out of time with the bottom of the engine. And if that happens, in many motors, you can actually have pieces of the motor. You can have the piston coming up and smashing valves, and you can destroy your engine and need a complete new engine or a rebuild, which is way more expensive than any timing belt job. So if you're a beginning DIYer, the risk is just too high to take on that job. However, there are some belts that you can do yourself that I do recommend. Your engine has another set of belts called accessory belts, or if it's just one big accessory belt, it's often called a serpentine belt. If you've ever heard your neighbor starting up their car in the morning and it's screeching like crazy, well, that's probably an accessory or serpentine belt going bad. That essentially runs all the pulleys for your alternator, your water pump, your AC compressor, and it's driven by crankshaft pulley of the engine. Now, these belts are outside of the engine, so you don't have to split the top off the engine and mess with timing or anything like that. You just have to remove the tension, whether that's a tensioner or maybe the alternator. You pull that old belt off and then you thread the new one on. Now you do have to be careful, because if you have put a belt on wrong and it's not running the alternator or not running the water pump properly, you can get into problems, but it's a lot easier to see and confirm that it's working when you put it on. Now this next job is a pretty big one, and you've probably heard it before. And that's the head gasket down inside your engine. Now, under normal circumstances, coolant is not allowed anywhere but in the cooling system. But when a head gasket blows or breaks, it often allows coolant straight into the engine, into your cylinders. That's very bad for your engine, and it's not going to perform properly. But in order to fix a head gasket, you got to take apart half of the motor to get to it and replace it. Now, it is not only a very complex and big job that a DIYer that's just starting out is not going to want to do, but it's also high stakes. You not only have to remove the head or heads, you generally want to get them milled or machined down properly, because if you mess any of that part up, you stand to blow the new head gasket very easily, and you could be right back where you started. And doing a head gasket job actually means you have to do a timing belt as well at the same time. So that's two jobs you shouldn't be tackling as a beginning DIYer. Now, speaking of the cooling system, there is a job that you can do, and that's your thermostat. Right here is your upper radiator hose, and at the end of it, when it goes into the engine, the thermostat, it's usually in its own little housing. So the thermostat is really important for your engine because it controls how much coolant is allowed into the engine in order to maintain a constant temperature. And when those go bad, they can get stuck open or closed, which is even worse, and coolant is not allowed into the engine, and your engine can overheat and blow that head gasket. Thermostats are often really cheap, 10, 20 bucks, and can be as easy as replacing in half an hour. Definitely worth knowing how to do and could save you blowing up your engine. Hey, I just want to take this moment to thank all of you that are subscribers to the channel. YouTube has showed us that about 10% of you watching this video are actual subscribers. So to the rest of you, you're missing out. Please take a moment, if you will, to subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. It really helps us make more videos for you. Now this next job has to do with your fuel system. And a big part of your fuel system is replacing your fuel pump when it goes bad. On many cars, the fuel tank itself has to be removed from underneath the car in order to get to the fuel tank. And if you've got a lot of fuel in that gas tank when you're trying to drop it, it can be really difficult and dangerous. On a lot of cars, the fuel tank can be accessed right under the back seat, which is great, but it's still a complex job because this fuel system is under pressure and it has to be properly released, which means often releasing gas into the surrounding environment, which can be dangerous. You can have fires if you do it improperly, or you can just fill your car with gas fumes. Additionally, on many models of cars, the fuel lines require specialty tools to actually disconnect them. So oftentimes you're not going to be able to even remove the fuel lines if you just have a basic toolkit. So this is not a job that the beginning DIYer should be tackling. Now, a job that you can do is cleaning your throttle body. Now, I know that's not part of the fuel system, but it is closely related because it monitors and controls the air that's mixing with the fuel. When your throttle body gets dirty and all crudded up, your engine starts running kind of rough, specifically at idle. We made a great video on why and how to clean these things, which we'll link to. Simply get everything out of the way, open it up, clean it out with a little bit of carb cleaner, throttle body cleaner, clean it out without moving the butterfly. So this is a really common and definitely doable job for a DIYer, and it's going to really improve the performance of your engine. Now, this next one isn't an individual job, but more broadly, it's diagnosing electrical issues in your car. So I'm talking about things like why your window won't roll up and down, or why your dash lights just suddenly went dead, or maybe why when you hit the horn, the windshield wipers go.
Okay.
So these are all electrical issues that can be kind of difficult to diagnose. First of all, it can take some more advanced equipment to diagnose electrical problems. Also, and more importantly, it usually takes a lot of experience and know-how when you're chasing down electrical gremlins. Furthermore, if you're trying to diagnose electrical issues and you don't know what you're doing, you can short things out with a multimeter. You know, if you're touching the wrong pins or you're probing wires, you can get sparks, you can burn yourself. You can even backfeed voltage into the ECU and blow that up, which is extremely expensive to replace. So it's just not something that a beginning DIYer should jump into. Now here's a job that you can do. The alternator is a very important part of your electrical system, obviously. So diagnostics aside, if you know that your alternator is bad and you need to replace it, that's something you can do yourself. Just requires removing this belt, getting anything out of the way that you need to, and then you unmount it, put in the new one, and you're good to go. Now, depending on your car, you could probably save $300, $400, $500 by changing your own alternator. In addition, often changing your alternator, which charges your battery, a lot of people replace their battery when they have electrical problems, when in fact, it's a bad alternator that's causing them. So by replacing a bad alternator, you can often solve a lot of electrical problems. Now, these next 3 jobs may surprise you with actually how little a beginner DIYer can actually do. In fact, one of them I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. All right, this next job has to do with your air conditioning. As a new DIYer, anytime your AC starts blowing warm, you're gonna be tempted to go to the store and buy one of these. Using a can like this, or honestly doing any operation on your AC system without the proper tools, is just gonna probably make the problem worse. Repairing a damaged AC system can be thousands of dollars. Anytime any work on the AC system needs to be done, whether that's replacing an element or diagnosing it, it needs to be done with proper equipment. And in order to operate that equipment, you need to know what you're doing. But if you don't use that proper equipment, you can have high pressure refrigerant blow up in your face, you're venting poisonous gases into the atmosphere, and you can very easily damage the system worse than it was before. But here's a job you can do on your AC. Your blower motor is right here under the glove box, and that's what actually forces the cold air out the vents onto your face and cools you down. So if you have an AC system that's not actually blowing any air out of your vents, whether cold or warm, chances are you might need a new blower motor. And removing that doesn't require removing the refrigerant or opening any lines. You're just taking the fan out and replacing it. Definitely something you can do. Now this next job is any job that has to do with the transmission. The problem with doing stuff with transmissions is not only are they big and heavy, they require some specialty equipment and know-how in order to repair them. Anything like replacing solenoids or doing a clutch job are all things that a beginner DIYer just don't touch it with a 10-foot pole, remember? This is increasingly true with modern transmissions. They're just getting more and more complex and harder for the layman to work on themselves. If you try to work on your own transmission and you mess something up, not only could you damage your transmission more, which again, they're so expensive to get repaired, but you could also start damaging parts of the engine as well. The one job that you can do for your transmission is exchanging the transmission fluid. It's something that you definitely want to do, and I can't believe how many people actually ignore this in their maintenance schedule. As I've said on my other videos, oftentimes changing the transmission fluid is easier than changing the engine oil. If you don't change your transmission fluid on time or regularly, your transmission suffers. You start to get slipping, slamming into gear, oftentimes irreparable damage just from not changing a bottle of $30 fluid. Now, every car is going to be a little bit different how you do this process, but usually it's pretty simple. We've made several transmission fluid videos on the channel, including one about how I do transmission fluid changes a little bit differently and better than the manufacturer recommends. We'll include a link to that. Now, this next job, like I referenced at the beginning of the video, if you get a little part of it wrong, can actually really hurt you. And that is any job to do with your airbag system. Now, I can hear the comments already. Josh, what if I just want to replace my clock spring or the occupant sensor under the seat? No big deal, right? Yeah, I hear you, and I've done those jobs plenty of times before. But what people don't realize is, though it's easy to remove airbag elements without them exploding, if you do one little thing wrong, you plug in one little thing crossways or you're probing around with a voltmeter, then that's when you can set things off. But unless you know exactly what you're doing, there are multiple ways that you can accidentally set off an airbag. These airbags are fired by chemical reactions set off by electrical pulses, and they deploy so fast, it's like being punched super hard. And honestly, I've even heard of people's necks getting fractured from the steering wheel one. So as a beginning DIYer, what part of your airbag system can you actually work on? Well, nothing. Don't mess with it. Leave it to a qualified professional. If you found this video helpful, check out this video we made on the top DIY mechanics mistakes that I see all the time.